Door closed, and you still don't fully understand why. You replayed it, you analyzed it, you prayed about it, you cried about it in private, in the shower, in the car at 2 a.m. when no one could see. You went back and counted every step you took right, every sacrifice you made, every prayer you whispered in the dark, and it still didn't open. The job, the relationship, the opportunity. The chapter you thought was going to change everything. It shut in your face like heaven itself decided you weren't ready. Like the universe looked at everything you'd built and said, not yet. And you smiled in front of people. You said you were fine. You said God has a plan. You said the words because you were supposed to say them. But in the private corners of your mind, there was a question you didn't dare say out loud. A question that scared you because of how honest it was. What if I missed it? What if that was my only chance? Stay with me. Because what I'm about to tell you will reach back into your past and rearrange everything you thought you knew about that moment. About that door. About what it closing actually meant for your life. You sensed it before anyone told you. You always sense things before they were explained to you. That's not coincidence, that's who you are. And that's exactly what we need to talk about. Part 1, the truth about what closed. Let's start with something most people will never say to you, because most people don't understand what's actually happening in your life. That door didn't close because you failed. It closed because heaven saw something you couldn't see from where you were standing. Think about it this way. You are walking through a forest, and you see a path, a beautiful path, wide, clear, with good light. And you start moving toward it because everything in you says this is right, this makes sense. This is the next step, and then suddenly something stops you, a gate, a wall, a strange blockage you didn't expect, and you push against it. You push hard, you try every angle, you try patience, you try force, you try faith, you try letting go and coming back, and the gate doesn't move. What you couldn't see from where you were standing was the cliff on the other side, not a small drop. A cliff. A fall that would have taken years of your life to climb back from if you ever climbed back at all. This is what I want you to sit with right now. The thing that didn't open was not a punishment. It was protection so precise, so perfectly timed that it could only have come from something that could see further down the road than you. And here's where it gets personal. Here's where you need to pay attention. Most people who experience rejection move through it in one of two ways. They either collapse into it and let it define them, or they push past it too quickly and never let it teach them what it was trying to teach. But you are different. You sensed from the beginning that something else was happening. You couldn't name it. You couldn't explain it to anyone. But deep inside that still, quiet place that is more you than anything else, you knew that this wasn't just failure. You knew that somehow, in some way you couldn't articulate, this was part of something. That knowing is not delusion. That knowing is not wishful thinking. That knowing is the mark of someone operating on a level that most people around them can't access. You have always felt different, and I don't mean that in a surface-level way. I mean you have always existed with the quiet, uncomfortable awareness that you are supposed to be somewhere else, doing something else, something bigger, something that requires more of you than ordinary life ever asked for. You couldn't put it into words as a child, you couldn't explain it to your family, but it was always there. This sense of calling, this sense of weight, this sense that your life was supposed to mean something that went beyond just surviving. And because you felt that, every closed door hit harder than it hit other people. Because every closed door felt like evidence against the thing you could feel inside you. It felt like the universe was contradicting itself. Like you were being told by some invisible force that you mattered, while the visible world kept telling you that you didn't. But here's the revelation. Those two things were never contradicting each other. They were working together. The closed doors were not proof that you were wrong about yourself. The closed doors were part of the preparation for what you were right about. And this is where everything begins to shift. Part 2, why you never fit in. Before we go any further, I need to talk to you about something that happened long before the specific door you're thinking about right now. Something that goes all the way back. You never really fit in, did you? Not in the complete way. Not in the deep, effortless, I belong here way that other people seem to fit into their social circles, their families, their environments. You could participate. You could laugh along. You could perform the version of yourself that made sense to the room. But there was always something underneath the performance that felt untranslatable. Something you knew about yourself that you could never quite find the words for. Something in you that was operating on a frequency that the people around you simply couldn't tune into. And that gap, that invisible distance between you and everyone else, felt like a flaw for a long time. It felt like evidence that something was wrong with you. That you were too much or not enough or broken in some way that hadn't been properly diagnosed. I want you to hear what I'm about to say very clearly. That gap was not a flaw, it was a feature. The feeling of not fitting in is not a sign that you were rejected by life. It is a sign that you are being shaped for a level of life that requires people who have been stretched beyond ordinary belonging. You cannot be formed into something extraordinary by ordinary experience. And ordinary belonging, the easy, unchallenged, everyone likes me kind of belonging, does not stretch you. It only confirms you. You were never supposed to be confirmed. You were supposed to be transformed. And transformation requires friction. It requires the discomfort of not quite belonging so that you are forced inward. So that you are forced to develop the interior life, the depth of thought, the emotional intelligence, the spiritual sensitivity that you now carry without even realizing how rare it is. The people who fit in everywhere never had to go inward. They never had to develop what you developed because they never had to. They had the comfort of external belonging. You had to build belonging from the inside out. This is what others could not understand about you. They looked at your isolation, your intensity, your strange quietness, or your strange depth, and they didn't know what to do with it. Some of them called it arrogance. Some of them called it weirdness. Some of them simply drifted away because they couldn't maintain closeness with someone who was always thinking about something bigger than the conversation they were in. And some of them, the ones who felt threatened by what they couldn't explain in you, they tried to cut you down. They said things that were designed to make you feel small. They dismissed your ideas. They excluded you from rooms you should have been in. They looked past you when they should have seen you. But notice what they also did without meaning to. They pushed you. Every person who pushed you away pushed you toward yourself. Every environment that rejected you into a deeper version of who you were meant to become. Every social circle that didn't hold you because you were meant to hold something too large to fit inside that circle. You felt this. You felt it, but you could never put it into words. You knew that your loneliness was carrying something that regular loneliness didn't carry. You knew that your isolation was not the end of something. You knew it was building something. You just didn't know what. And not knowing what was the hardest part, here is what was being built. Every year you spent feeling misunderstood added another layer of depth to your character. Every time you sat alone with your thoughts when everyone else was distracted by the noise, you were developing a capacity for silence and stillness that will be essential for what is coming next in your life. Every relationship that ended, every opportunity that didn't materialize, every season of waiting that felt like it would never become a season of movement, all of it was deposits. All of it was accumulation. All of it was heaven building something in you that cannot be built any other way. And here is the part that most people miss entirely. The part that changes everything when you finally understand it. The things that made you different were not obstacles to your destiny. They were the very ingredients of it. Part 3, the real reason the door closed. Now we go deeper. Now we get to what this is really about. That door that closed, the specific one that still lives in a tender corner of your mind, I need to tell you something about what was on the other side of it. If that door had opened, you would have walked into a version of your life that looked like the right version. It would have had the right appearance. The right title maybe, the right relationship maybe, the right city or career or chapter. It would have made sense to everyone around you. It would have been explainable, comfortable, logical. And it would have been not because you chose wrong, not because you prayed wrong, not because you didn't deserve it, but because that version of your life was built at the wrong scale for what you are actually meant to carry. You would have walked into a room that was too small for who you were going to become. And because it would have been comfortable, you would have stayed. Because it would have looked like success from the outside, you would have called it success. And the version of you that was supposed to emerge, the fuller, deeper, more powerful version that the world actually needs, would have stayed dormant inside a life that was just good enough to keep you from reaching for great. Heaven protected you from a comfortable ceiling. Let me say that again because you need to feel the weight of it. Heaven protected you from a comfortable ceiling. The most dangerous place a person with your capacity can end up is inside a life that's just good enough to stop the hunger. Just comfortable enough to stop the searching. Just presentable enough that you stop asking the harder questions. Because it is the harder questions, the hunger, the searching, the ache that refuses to go away no matter how much you try to satisfy it, that keeps you moving toward what you were actually made for. And you have felt this ache. You have felt it even in the seasons when everything seemed fine from the outside. Even when you had things that should have been enough, there was that persistent, quiet, slightly maddening sense that there was more, that you hadn't arrived yet, that you were still becoming something you hadn't fully become. That ache is not restlessness. It is not ingratitude. It is not self-sabotage. It is a compass. And a compass only works when you haven't arrived yet. The fact that it was still pointing somewhere, the fact that it is still pointing somewhere even now, means you haven't arrived yet. And that means you are still in motion, still in becoming, still on the way. Now let me show you the psychology behind this, because this is where it gets precise. There is a concept that psychologists call post-traumatic growth. The idea is that after significant struggle or loss or failure, certain people don't just recover. They emerge from the experience operating at a higher level than they were before the event. They develop qualities they didn't have before, wisdom they couldn't have been taught in a classroom. Resilience that only comes from being tested. Perspective that only comes from standing in a valley and looking up at how far the mountain still goes. Post-traumatic growth doesn't happen to everyone. It happens to people who process their pain differently. People who can sit with discomfort instead of running from it. People who are capable of asking, inside the worst moments, the question, what is this trying to teach me? People who can hold both grief and hope simultaneously without letting one erase the other. You can do this. You have always been able to do this, even if you didn't know the name for it, even if nobody ever pointed it out to you. You have the capacity to alchemize pain into something useful, and that capacity is not common, it is rare. And it is a direct indicator of the level at which you are meant to operate. But here is the part that is hardest to sit with. The reason that the door had to close the way it did, abruptly, confusingly, without clean explanation, is because if it had closed softly, if it had come with a clear reason and a clean resolution, you would have accepted the closure and moved on too quickly. The jarring quality of it, the way it left you with questions that didn't have answers, the way it kept you up at night and brought you back to replay it over and over again, that was intentional. That agitation was doing something in you. That confusion was forcing you to dig deeper than you would have dug if everything had gone smoothly. The closed door became a mirror. And in that mirror, you found things about yourself that you needed to find. You found strength you didn't know was there. You found faith that was more durable than you thought. You found the ability to keep moving even when you couldn't see where the moving was leading. And you found, perhaps most importantly of all, a clarity about what you actually want that you could never have found if the thing you thought you wanted had simply been handed to you. This is what others could not understand. They saw your struggle with the closed door and they thought you were stuck. They thought you were unable to move on, but you were not stuck. You were in the middle of the most important excavation of your life. Part 4. The people who left. While we're here, we need to talk about the people. Because the door didn't just close on opportunities. Some of the doors that closed were on relationships, on people, on communities, on versions of yourself that were tied to other people's presence. Some people walked out of your life in a way that still doesn't fully make sense. Some left loudly with conflict and drama. Some left quietly with distance and silence that grew until it became disappearance. Some of them were people you trusted completely, people you thought were permanent. People you had built things with, memories with, a version of your daily life with, and then they were gone. And the shape of their absence sat in your life like a negative space you didn't know how to fill. And you asked why, you asked what you did, you asked what you could have done differently, you asked if something was wrong with you that made people leave. And if you're honest, really honest, there was a part of you that wondered if you were simply meant to be alone. If your difference, your depth, your intensity made sustained closeness impossible. Let me dismantle that lie right now. The people who left your life did not leave because you were too much. They left because you were becoming too much for the level they were operating on. There is a profound and important difference between those two things, and I need you to feel that difference in your body, not just understand it in your mind. When you grow, you change. When you change, you require different things. You require different conversations, different environments, different people who can meet you where you are actually going rather than where you used to be. And the people who were right for who you used to be are not always the people who are right for who you are becoming. This is not a criticism of them. This is not a failure of the relationship. This is simply the physics of growth. Things that served a previous version of a structure must sometimes be released when the structure is expanding beyond its original design. Some of those people left because they felt, on a level they couldn't articulate, that you were moving towards something they couldn't follow. And rather than face the discomfort of that truth, they created distance. They manufactured reasons. They allowed the relationship to dissolve in ways that left you confused because the real reason that they sensed you outgrowing the space you'd shared was never spoken aloud. And some people left because they were only ever meant to be in a chapter of your life, not the whole book. This one is harder to accept because it feels like it should be sadder than it is. But the people who were assigned to a specific chapter of your becoming were not failures. They were gifts for that chapter. They taught you what you needed to learn in that season. They carried you through what needed carrying. And when the chapter turned, they remained in the chapter they belonged to, and you moved forward into the next one. The loneliness you felt after the leaving was real. I am not going to minimize it. Loneliness of that particular kind, the loneliness of someone who can feel the rightness of their direction but cannot yet see the people who belong to the direction, is its own specific kind of pain. It is sharp and quiet at the same time. It is the loneliness of the between, of being no longer where you were and not yet where you're going. But here is what the between is doing. The between is creating a clearing. It is creating space. Not empty space, not abandoned space, but intentional space. Space that is being prepared for what comes next. The relationships that are approaching your life, the ones that are on their way, that are already moving toward you even as you read this, those relationships require a version of you that was only possible after the clearing. They are relationships with people who operate on the frequency you've always been on but couldn't find company on. People who understand you without needing you to explain yourself. People for whom your depth is not a burden but a meeting place. You cannot meet them until you've been cleared of the connections that were keeping you at a lower altitude. The loneliness was not punishment, it was preparation. And the people who are coming into your life in this next season are going to make so much of the past loneliness make sense in a way that fills rather than explains. You won't just understand why the others left. You will be so present in what is being built that the question of why they left will become secondary to the gratitude for what arrived. Most people will never experience this kind of shift. Most people cycle through relationships without ever understanding the pattern. You are not most people. You already sense that there's a pattern, and sensing the pattern is the first step in inhabiting it with intention. Part 5, the major revelation why you were hidden. Stop. I need to bring you to the center of this now. The major revelation. The thing that, if you receive it fully, will rearrange not just how you understand your past, but how you move into your future. Heaven hid you on purpose, not from destiny, toward it. This is the thing that nobody talks about in the narrative of success and purpose because it doesn't fit the clean storyline. The clean storyline says you work hard, you stay faithful, doors open, blessings flow. And while there is truth in that, there is a layer of truth beneath it that is more honest, more specific, and more suited to the particular kind of life you are living. Some people are hidden before they are revealed, not as punishment, not as delay for its own sake, but because what they are carrying requires a specific kind of development that only happens in hiddenness. That only happens when the external world is not confirming you, not promoting you, not putting a spotlight on you. That only happens in the quiet seasons when nothing seems to be happening on the surface, but everything is happening underground. Think of a tree in winter. From the outside, it looks dormant, it looks finished, it looks like it has stopped. But underneath the ground, something expansive is happening. The root system is deepening. The root system is reaching further, anchoring more firmly, preparing to support something larger than the tree currently shows. And in the spring, the new growth that emerges is only possible because of what happened in the winter that nobody could see. You have been in a winter, maybe a long one, maybe longer than felt fair. And the world looked at you and thought dormant, thought stuck, thought delayed. And you sometimes looked at yourself through the world's eyes and thought the same thing. But underground, in the hiddenness, something has been growing in you that is going to astonish people when it finally becomes visible. Not because you planned it or forced it, but because it was happening the whole time, in the quiet, in the margin, in the long nights of thinking and praying and wondering and becoming. There is a reason why the most significant voices in history were hidden before they were heard. There is a reason why the most transformative figures spent years in obscurity before the world could see what they were carrying. The world cannot handle something it hasn't been prepared for. And you cannot be received at the level you're meant to operate at until you've been prepared at that level. Here is the psychology of this. Every person who is meant to operate at a level of significant influence, and I mean real influence, the kind that changes things and matters and lasts, goes through what researchers call a liminal period, a threshold time. A time when they are between what they were and what they are becoming, and neither version is yet fully visible. The liminal period is disorienting. It often involves loss. It often involves confusion. It often involves the collapse of structures that no longer serve the new thing being built. The liminal period is not a detour. The liminal period is the most essential part of the journey. Because what happens in the threshold, what happens in the between, is the formation of identity. Not the performance of identity, but the actual formation of it. The deep settling into who you are and what you carry that cannot be performed and cannot be rushed and cannot be shortcut. It can only be inhabited. And you have been inhabiting it whether you had the language for it or not. And this is where the spiritual dimension becomes undeniable. Because there is something about the experience you have been through, something about the specific combination of gifts and pain and delay and isolation and hunger and hope, that is too precise to be accidental. The particular shape of your life, the particular struggles you've faced, the particular things you've lost, and the particular things that refuse to leave you form a pattern. And that pattern is not random. That pattern is a blueprint. And the blueprint is not for a life that is simply surviving. It is for a life that is eventually, unmistakably, irreversibly thriving in the specific purpose it was created to fulfill. You sensed this before anyone told you. You always sensed this. And the sensing was not arrogance. The sensing was accuracy. You were reading the blueprint. You just couldn't see the whole drawing yet. Now here is what changes everything. What I'm about to say, hold it carefully because it is the key. The door that closed was not the door to your destiny. It was a door to a distraction from it, not a bad distraction, not an evil thing, just the wrong thing at the wrong scale for the right person. And heaven, which can see the full drawing when you can only see the corner you're standing in, closed that door before you could walk into a version of your life that would have asked less of you than you were actually built for. The door closed to protect the destiny, and the destiny is still there. It did not leave when the door closed. It simply moved to a door that hasn't opened yet, a door that is closer than you realize. Part 6. The delay that was actually positioning. I want to talk about timing now. Because this is where many people in your position lose their footing. You look around and you see people who seem to be arriving. People who seem to be stepping into exactly what they were meant for right on time with visible ease. And you compare the trajectory of their life to yours, and the comparison is painful in a specific way. Not a jealous pain necessarily, more like a confused pain. A why not yet pain, a pain that whispers questions in the quiet moments. But here is what you don't see from the outside of someone else's journey. You don't see what it cost them. You don't see what they lost before they gained. You don't see the private version of the same confusion and waiting and asking that you have been living. You only see the arrival. You don't see the road. And even more importantly, you don't see the level, because not all arrivals are arriving at the same level. Some people get what they were meant for quickly, and what they were meant for was sized for a quick arrival. That is not a criticism of them. It is simply a different assignment. Your assignment is larger, and larger assignments take longer to prepare for. This is not unfair. This is physics. The pilot of a small aircraft can train in 6 months. The pilot of a 747 trains for years, not because the 747 pilot is less capable. Because they are being qualified for something that carries more weight, moves at a higher altitude, and requires a precision of skill that takes longer to build. The extended training is not a punishment, it is the prerequisite, and you would not want a 747 pilot who trained for 6 months. You would not want to be served by someone qualified below the level of what they were called to carry. You are being qualified. The delay is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of your assignment. And here is the thing about your assignment that you need to understand on a new level. Your assignment is not just about your success. Your assignment is about what your success produces in the lives of other people. The people who are waiting for what you carry, the people whose lives will be changed by the thing you are being prepared to do, they are also being prepared to receive it. The timing of your release is coordinated with the timing of their readiness. Heaven is not just preparing you. Heaven is aligning an entire ecosystem of people and circumstances and open doors that don't exist yet and need not exist yet because you aren't ready to walk through them yet. And when you are ready, when the preparation reaches its completion and the timing aligns, the movement will be swift. The doors that open in a new season open differently than the doors you've been knocking on in this season. They open without the same friction. They open with a rightness that you feel before you fully understand. They open into spaces where you are recognized before you have to prove yourself, where your presence produces exactly the effect it was designed to produce, where what you carry is not too much or too strange, but exactly what was needed. You will know when you're in the right room, not because it's perfect, but because it fits, because for the first time you won't feel like you're translating yourself. You will be able to be exactly what you are and find that it is exactly enough. That room is closer than you think. And this is the thing about your delay that is most important. It is coming to an end, not in some vague, undefined, whenever God decides way. It is coming to an end in a specific and tangible way in a season that is closer to now than to the beginning of your journey. You are not at the start of this. You are in the approach. And the approach always feels like the longest part because you can almost see the destination and the distance between almost, and there is somehow harder than the distance when you couldn't see anything at all. The closer you get, the more patience you need, the more faith you need, the more ability to stand in the tension between what is and what is coming, and you have that ability. You have been building it for years. Every time you chose to keep going when stopping seemed easier, you were building it. Every time you chose faith when evidence was thin, you were building it. Every time you chose to believe in the thing inside you that the world couldn't see, you were building the exact quality of character that makes someone capable of holding what is coming. Part 7, your pain became your preparation. There is one more layer. One more thing I need to say to you before we get to what's coming. Your pain was not wasted. I need you to hear that beyond the level of inspirational statement. I need you to hear it as a specific, precise, documented truth about your life. Every specific thing that hurt you, every loss, every rejection, every season of confusion and waiting and not knowing produced something in you, something real, something measurable, something that is now woven into the fabric of who you are in a way that cannot be separated from you and cannot be replicated by any other path. The empathy you carry came from somewhere. It came from the pain you survived. The people who will be changed by your life will be changed because you can meet them in their pain with a recognition that is not theoretical. You don't just understand pain as a concept. You have lived in the specific rooms of grief and confusion and waiting that they are living in. And when you speak to them from that experience, what they feel is not inspiration. They feel seen. They feel found. They feel less alone in a world that has made them feel profoundly alone. And that feeling, that experience of being seen and found by someone who has actually been there, is one of the most healing things one human being can offer another. You could not have manufactured that capacity in a classroom. You could not have bought it. You could not have accessed it through someone else's story. It required your story. It required the specific weight of your specific journey. And the weight of it, which felt for so long like the heaviest thing you carried, is going to become the most powerful thing you carry. Because it is going to let you reach people that nobody else can reach. This is what I mean when I say your pain became your preparation. It is not a metaphor, it is a mechanism. The very thing that broke you open also made you larger on the inside, and you are now capable of holding more than you were before the breaking. More compassion, more wisdom, more patience, more faith. More understanding of what it means to be human in the difficult, beautiful, confusing way that being human actually is. And here is the psychological truth underneath the spiritual one. There is a research concept called adversarial growth, the documented phenomenon of people developing beyond their previous capabilities as a direct result of adversity. Not in spite of it, because of it. The adversity is not incidental to the growth. The adversity is the mechanism. It is the pressure that creates the diamond. It is the resistance that builds the muscle. It is the fire that refines rather than destroys because the material being refined is strong enough to survive the heat. You survived the heat more than once. You did not always know while it was happening that you would survive it. There were moments when survival felt uncertain, but you made it through, and each time you made it through, you came out with a refined quality that you didn't have before. You carry more than you know. You have more in you than the world has yet seen, and the world is about to encounter what you've been building in the fire. Most people will never experience this kind of depth. Most people move through life without being tested at the level you have been tested, And so most people remain at the surface with surface-level wisdom and surface-level resilience. What you have is not surface level. It goes all the way down. And that depth is what makes you capable of something genuinely extraordinary in the season that is coming. Part 8. The season is changing. I need to tell you something directly. Something I want you to receive not as a performance or a platitude, but as the most honest thing you've heard in a long time. Your season is changing, not eventually, not someday, not in some abstract future that remains perpetually out of reach. In a now that is closer than your recent past would suggest. In a season that is already beginning to show its edges if you know how to look for them, you may have already noticed things. Small things, things that didn't used to happen or didn't used to happen this way. A door that opened a crack, an unexpected conversation with a stranger that left you thinking for days, a sense stronger than usual that something is shifting just beneath the surface of your visible life. A dream, a feeling, a moment of clarity that came out of nowhere and felt like a message. A restlessness that is different from the old restlessness, not the ache of the waiting but the electricity of the approaching. Pay attention to those things. They are not coincidences, they are not wishful thinking, they are signals. And the fact that you can feel them, that you are sensitive enough to notice them in the noise of everyday life, is itself a sign of the particular quality of attunement you carry. The season that is coming is not going to look like what you imagined when you were imagining your breakthrough in the middle of your hardest days. Because what you were imagining was shaped by where you were, and what is coming was shaped by where you are going. It will likely be larger than what you imagined. It will likely be in a direction that is adjacent to what you imagined, close enough to recognize but different enough to surprise you. It will come with people in it that you haven't met yet and can't fully imagine yet. And it will come with a sense of rightness that will be unmistakable from the first moment you step into it. Here is what I want you to do as you move toward it. Do not shrink. The tendency, after long seasons of closed doors, is to shrink your expectations, to protect yourself by wanting less, to make your vision small enough that disappointment becomes impossible. This is understandable. This is the intelligent response to repeated pain. But it is not the correct response for someone standing at the threshold of a new season, because you will only walk through what you can actually envision walking through. And if your vision has contracted to the size of your pain, you will walk into something too small to hold what is actually available to you. Expand. Dare to envision at the full scale of what you sense you were made for, not at the reduced scale of what recent experience has suggested is realistic. Realistic is defined by what has happened. What is possible is defined by what hasn't happened yet. You are not living in what has happened. You are living on the edge of what hasn't happened yet. And do not apologize for being ready. There will be people around you who are uncomfortable with your readiness, who are unsettled by the confidence you carry as you step into this new season, who will tell you in subtle and not so subtle ways to manage your expectations, to be more humble, to be more cautious. These people are not your enemies. They are simply speaking from their own experience, which is not your experience. They have not been through what you've been through. They have not been prepared the way you've been prepared. And they cannot accurately assess what you are ready for. Only you know that. Only you and whatever force has been doing this work, and you know the full picture of your readiness. Trust that picture. Trust what is in you, not arrogantly, not aggressively, but with the quiet, steady, unshakable certainty of someone who has been through the fire and come out knowing who they are. Part 9. Who you are now. Let me tell you who you are now, not who you were, not who you will be someday. Who you are right now in this moment as a result of everything you have been through. You are someone who knows how to hold hope in one hand and uncertainty in the other without dropping either. This is rarer than you know. Most people can only hold one at a time. They choose certainty and lose their sensitivity, or they choose sensitivity and lose their grounding. You have learned to hold both. This is the posture of someone built for genuine leadership, genuine service, genuine impact. You are someone who has been tested by silence and survived it. Most people cannot survive the silence, the season when heaven seems quiet, when the answers are not coming, when the confirmation you need is simply not there. They fill the silence with noise, with distraction, with counterfeit purposes that at least make sound. You sat in the silence. You let the silence have you. And in the sitting, you develop the capacity for depth of thought and depth of spirit that is only available to people who can be quiet long enough to go underneath the surface of things. You are someone who has been stretched by isolation into a larger interior life. The richness of your inner world, the complexity of your thinking, the intensity of your feeling, the breadth of your understanding, is a direct product of the seasons when your exterior world was small. When you had to go inward because the outward wasn't providing what you needed. That interior richness is not just personal wealth. It is the source material for everything you will create, lead, write, speak, teach, build, and offer in the season that is coming. And you are someone who, despite everything, chose to keep believing, not naively, not without the full weight of your doubt and confusion and disappointment pressing against the belief. You chose to keep believing anyway. That is not a small thing. That is a profound and courageous act. And that act of continued belief, repeated across years and closed doors and silent seasons, has formed something in you that cannot be undone. A foundation that will hold whatever is built on top of it, even if what is built becomes larger than anything you currently have the capacity to imagine. This is who you are now. This is what has been built in the time that looked like nothing was happening. And this person, this version of you, right now in this exact season, is exactly who is needed for what is coming next.
Let me tell you who you are now, not who you were, not who you will be someday, who you are right now, in this moment as the result of the everything you have been through. You are someone who knows how to hold hope in one hand and uncertainty in the other without dropping either. This is the rare then you know. Most people can only hold one at a time. They choose certainty and lose their sensitivity, or they choose sensitivity and lose their grounding. You have learned to hold both. This is the posture of someone built for genuine leadership, genuine service, genuine impact. You are someone who has been tested by silence and survived it. Most people cannot survive the silence, the season when heaven seems quiet, when the answers are not coming, when the confirmation you need is simple not there. They fill the silence with noise, with distraction, with counterfeit purpose that at least makes sound. You sat in the silence. You let the silence have you. And in this sitting, you develop the capacity for depth of thought and depth of spirit that is only available to people who can be quiet long enough to go underneath the surface of things. You are someone who has been stretched by isolation into a larger interior life. The richness of your inner world, the complexity of your thinking, the intensity of your feeling, the breadth of your understanding is a direct product of the seasons when your exterior world was small, when you had to go inward because the outward wasn't providing what you need. That interior richness is not just a personal wealth, it is the source material for everything you will create, lead, write, speak, teach, build, and offer in the season that is coming. And you are someone who, despite everything, choose to keep believing, not natively, not without the full weight of your doubt and confusion and disappointment pressing against the belief. You choose to keep believing anyway. That is not a small thing. That is a proud. That is a profound and courage act and act of the continued believed, repeated across years and closed doors and silence seasons has formed something in you that cannot be undone. A foundation that will hold whatever is built on top of it, even if what is the built becomes the larger than anything you certainly have to capacity to imagine. This is who you are now. This is what has been built in the time that look like nothing was happening, and this version of you right now, in this exact season, is exactly who is needed for what is coming next.